Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is the Still Soul mental health space, and I'm happy that you're here. My name is Paula K. Taylor, and today we are going to talk a little bit about men's mental health. So, it is November, and in November, for this year, it's November 19th, we celebrate Men's Day, International Men's Day. And I think in honor of, International Men's Day, I want to spend November focusing on men's mental health. It is not a topic that is widely talked about. It's not something that is really focused on much because men's mental health is the taboo topic in an already taboo topic of mental health. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to be drawing references from a number of articles, well, not from a number of articles, but a few articles. And I will definitely link those below. So let's get started. Alright, so if you hear anything in the background, just know say the people in my cut them yard. So men's mental health. The topic of men's mental health is not just like a vaguely touched on or barely touched on topic in Jamaica, but around the world. And men's ideas or men's thoughts towards mental health, the whole issue of mental health, the whole topic of mental illness. There have been documentation of what their thoughts are as it pertains to, mental health. So I'm going to I'm going to make reference to a survey that was done in the UK by this mental health service provider. And then I'm going to go into discussing men's mental health in the Jamaican landscape. So that's what we're doing. All right, so the survey was done of 1,000 men in the UK. And this survey gave some very vital information that I think can be applied, right across the board. So of the 1,000 men who did this survey, 77% of these men have dealt with common mental illnesses or mental health issues rather, like anxiety, depression, and stress. And those are common mental health issues right across the board. It's not unique to just women. It's not unique to just a subset or subgroup of men. It's something that like everybody experienced at some point in time. Stress, anxiety, depression, right? So of that 77%, 40% have never spoke to anybody about their mental health issues or their mental health in general. And I mean, that sounds, familiar in the sense that it is not a widespread practice for men to talk about their mental health for many reasons, and there are a few listed here. There may be, feelings of embarrassment about talking about their mental health, and there's just the general negative stigma attached to talking about their mental health, and so some men would rather not get into that topic because there's too much at stake in terms of, their self-image and their ego. And when I say ego, I don't mean like puffed up, sense of pride kind of thing. It's just that the expectations that have been placed on men by society as a whole does not necessarily allow for them to generally feel comfortable having these kinds of conversations about their mental health. So the biggest causes of mental health issues in men, according to this particular survey, are three things: work, finances, and their physical health. So, work, whether it's work pressure or trying to excel at work, trying to get a job, that kind of thing. Work, finances, so whether you're struggling financially, you're not making ends meet the way that you need to. You are, you're in debt. You probably have responsibilities, and you have like people dependent on you, who need you to like be making a certain kind of income in order to live well, and all that. And then of course their health, they want to make sure that they're in good health. And the thought of not being healthy enough is a cause for concern and can trigger poor mental health. And it's so interesting that the things that cause mental health issues in men are linked to their positioning in society, in families, in homes. Their mental health issues in men, based on this study, the biggest causes are based on their role as provider, protector, and being just a strong, like the pillar in like families and society. And so not being able to adequately meet the standards, and not being able to properly fill that role or fill those roles can be stressing, can be overwhelming, can cause poor mental health, which I find very interesting. I dare say, fascinating, right? So, other reasons why men would not want to talk about their mental health. They have learned to deal with it. 4% of the respondents of this survey said they have learned to deal with it. Some men may have found some coping mechanisms that seem to work. Whether or not these are healthy coping mechanisms or unhealthy coping mechanisms, that's a whole nother topic. But they found a way to make it work. Another reason is that they feel too embarrassed. I've mentioned before, they feel too embarrassed about talking about their mental health. And somebody shared an article with me recently, which I'm going to, if I can find it again, I'm going to link it. But it's about these two brothers who lost their brother recently due to suicide. And all three of them lost their parents years ago. And that particular brother had been struggling with depression for years. And inevitably, or ultimately, he took his life. And these two brothers, the two surviving brothers, have stated that, they have not really had conversations about their mental health or their struggles with coping because it's too embarrassing to talk about. It's not something that they do. It's not something that men are expected to do. And, that embarrassment, that feeling, that stigma again, attached to talking about, mental health and just the struggles that you deal with in different stages of life. For these brothers, it was the grief. It was unprocessed grief or underprocessed grief, maybe, that, contributed to the loss of life for one brother and the continued struggle for the others. So, the negative stigma attached, and then, of course, some men do not want to admit that they need support. Why? Well, based on what we have read and based on what we know, men are expected to be strong in society. Men are expected to bear the weight of, everybody else's burdens on their shoulders. And so, as provider, protector, you don't really have space to show any kind of weakness. And the general thought or general idea around mental health issues is that there is some weakness. And so if as a man you are displaying said weakness, then your position as a strong person, your position as a provider, protector is subsequently compromised. So if there are any men watching this video right now, which by the way, share this with any any guys in your life, your father, your brother, your uncle, your husband, your cousin, your boyfriend, share it. Let's have this conversation in the comments below. Do you feel as though sharing your mental health struggles with others, do you feel as though it compromises your position as a provider, protector, strong person in society? Let's talk about that in the comments below. I'd love to hear. So other topics, which again kind of lead back to what I was saying, don't want to appear weak, and we covered that. And then for a small percentage of the men that did the survey, they just have no one to talk to, or they believe that they have no one to talk to. This could be that they really truly have no one to talk to, or it could be a case where they don't believe they have anyone to talk to. They don't trust the persons in their circle enough to talk about this particular thing, or the fear of being judged, ridiculed, mocked, well, ridiculed and mocked, same thing, judged, ridiculed, their position in society being compromised. They feel as though, okay, I can't talk about this thing because the kind of understanding that I would want to be present will not be. I hope I'm making sense. I'm trying to go through this topic slowly because the topic of men's mental health is not widely covered, and so I'm trying to make sure that whatever I talk about makes sense. So yeah. All right. And interestingly enough, a lot of the men that did this survey did not even feel comfortable talking to their doctor about their mental health issues. And I think it just boils down to that fear of being judged and ridiculed, that fear of not being understood the way that you would like to be understood, without the extra stuff, without the judgment, without the criticism. Ooh, stay right there. Without the judgment, without the criticism, without the being made to feel less than a man because you're struggling with something in this moment. So let's talk about what men's mental health looks like in the Jamaican landscape, in a Jamaican context. So I have two articles that I'm referencing, and I will link them down below. But as a Jamaican, we know how our society view men's mental health. And in my last video, I made mention of that in the part 1 of Jamaican myths. I will link that somewhere. And I know you guys are waiting on part 2, but I'm kind of putting this out there first before I drop part 2. But definitely check out part 1. You can, hear me and my friends' conversation or thoughts on men's mental health, as well as other things. You can just come right back, or just open that video in a new tab, save it for later. Finish watching this video. Yeah. So generally speaking, the thought is that men don't take mental health seriously in our society, and that is because of the wiring or the belief that showing weakness is not manly. So therefore, and the belief that having mental health issues is a sign of weakness. And so when you put that together, you have men in society who are struggling, who are not coping well, who are trying to do all the things but not properly managing not being able to, not being given the chance or having the outlet to release, process, rest mentally, recoup, and come back better because of the strong belief that men should show no sign of weakness, and mental health issues are signs of weaknesses. They are not. Even the strongest people in society have mental health issues. And mental health issues can really just be like being stressed, being burnt out, being overwhelmed. But not properly dealing with these common, very basic mental health issues can lead to more serious things. And we see it in our society where, we hear about men doing heinous things. And we're going to cover that in an article that I'm going to actually share. But yeah, the pressure on men to function daily, again, as if everything is fine, and also the fact that our society, like I mentioned before, does not give men the permission to be or to have weak moments or to be soft, not being able to feel your feelings in a healthy way leads to unhealthy coping mechanisms in some cases, or men just locking up everything inside and not properly dealing with that. And in our society, where being soft as a man leads to criticism and derogatory labeling like mama man or being a sissy or the other thing, being a girl clown in some cases. Probably if a man is too in love with his woman or too expressive about his love for a woman, or if he has suffered heartbreak and he's expressing a lot of emotion surrounding that, you get labeled in ways that make you feel away. And so there isn't space in our society for men to be soft, for men to feel their feelings in a healthy way. And so the stigma attached to struggling with your mental health generally, but specifically for men, has led men to hiding their emotions and hiding their mental health struggles as a way of coping, or as a way of, not making space for any kind of harsh criticism, right? So in an article from The Gleaner written in 2020, the article, and I will definitely link it below, the article is basically Professor Donna Hope talking about the toxic ideal about the male identity and depression. So she's talking about depression and male identity specifically, but we're going to just look at it generally as men's mental health. So let me get into it real quickly. I'm not going to read everything, but the important things, the main things, I'm going to just kind of bring out and I'm going to talk about it. All right, so Professor Donna Hope believes that in order to effect positive changes, and this was in regards to the rise in gender-based violence and domestic violence, and I think in that time as well there are a couple of men who were doing murder suicides, killing their partners and killing themselves, or just destroying their homes fatally, and it's kind of interesting. So before I get into the topic, into the article, it's kind of interesting how the importance of it being men's mental health, the importance of it, or the topic of it, or discussions around it took place or take place when, okay, let me try and phrase this properly. Takes place when the repercussions of men not properly processing their emotions affect like other members of society, so like women and children. Not that the conversation shouldn't be had, but it's like, and you can always correct me if I'm wrong. I'm open to correction because maybe I'm not paying attention. But it's like, generally, the topic of men's mental health would not be brought up unless there is like the topic of men's mental health is brought into focus when it's linked to women and children, or women being affected. So by itself, so just randomly going, hey, let's talk about men's mental health some more, let's spend some time discussing it. It's not really done unless the case where men are doing acts of violence, and there are things that are happening in society, and it's because this is an issue, so let's talk about it. It's kind of like more reactive than proactive. That's where I'm going. I'm gonna probably have to edit this, but anyways, it's kind of more reactive than proactive in that sense. But yeah, so this article was written because of the rise in gender-based violence, and just the acknowledgement that men are struggling with their mental health. So Dr. Hope believes that in order to effect positive changes to what may be described as the country's biggest problem, toxic ideas of masculinity and mental health conversations must be dismantled. So she goes on to say that the definition of hardcore Jamaican masculinity suggests that a man must not show any emotions. Or men have developed this notion based on socialization that, quote unquote, man a wall and man must be strong. And we have talked about that. We've seen that where men have no permission in our society to be weak, to have any sign of weakness. And shout out to the women who create spaces for the men in their lives to be soft, to have their weak moments, to have their low moments, to go through their time and not feel as though they will be judged for it. Because you know what? It's needed. There needs to be more spaces like that. But we'll get to that. Right? So our society does not give men permission to be soft. Men need a chance to vent and feel safe doing so. In the current scheme of things, when you're too soft as a man, then label you all kinds of things. Girl clown, mama man, and I went through all of these terms before. Being provider, protector, the strong one is a lot, and many of our men don't have the support they need to be all these things and more. So it's not a case where the men want to give up these roles, because it's innate. That's how men are wired, to be strong, to be provider, to be the pillar in our society. However, it doesn't negate the fact that there will be struggles, there will be issues, there will be moments where they are just overwhelmed, stressed, depressed. They need to cry. They go through grief, and grief is a whole roller coaster. But not having that space to properly process and go through the feelings, go through the emotions, and cope healthily, it can be destructive, not just for the men, but for other members of society who rely on men, women, children. Professor Hope says that men need comfort, and most times it's not available for men, for our men. And that is true. So oftentimes in our society, in our Jamaican society, we see where when things are not dealt with in a healthy way, men will have what Dr. Hope describes as snap episodes, where whatever they're dealing with comes out in acts of violence, whether it's violence towards themselves or towards other people. Now, I'm not saying that every single act of violence in our society is as a result of men not having the space to feel their feelings and not having proper, mental health support. There are wicked people out there who will be wicked even when they're having a good day. That's just it. But then there are other men who, not being properly supported, not getting the kind of mental health support that they need, leads to acts of violence. I think earlier this year there were two very tragic, and I dare say unique cases in our Jamaican society where I remember this one guy in particular who took the life of his parents. He had a mental health issue that was wide known in the community. Now, we don't know if this person was getting the kind of support that he needed, but whatever the case is, he took their lives. I think there was another case that was similar. I'm gonna have to look for these stories or look for these articles to link, but if I don't link them, you can go ahead and look on the Jamaica Observer or the Jamaica Gleaner. So, these men, and there are other cases where, like I mentioned before, the gentleman that his life, he was dealing with depression and he wasn't properly dealing with it. The grief, the loss of their parents, it was just a lot, and so he just took his life. And there are others who may have taken the life of their family members, random people, for the simple reason of being mentally unwell, not properly processing their emotions, and turning to acts of violence as an outlet. So men's mental health is, again, I mentioned, it's a topic that is not talked about. Men's mental health in society is not a focus. I mean, mental health is already not really a focus, but zooming in on mental health, it's like not something that we focus on for men because, again, men should be strong, men are the pillars, men are the providers. There's no time, there's no space for men to go through these feelings. But it's a part of life. Having mental health issues is a part of life, and when we start to acknowledge and accept that more, and we start to address it in a healthy way, I think it can contribute to the lowering of certain fatal and tragic acts in our society. So I'm going to end this video with just a couple things that we can do to support men's mental health. So if you're a lady watching this, I got some tips for how you can support the mental health of the men in your life. Number one, and this is general, let's start having conversations. Let's open up the spaces in our homes, in our workplaces, on social media. And I'm grateful for the pockets of platforms on social media that have these kind of conversations regularly. So let's start having conversations. Let's make it a norm. Let's make it acceptable, or let's make it a standard in our society to have conversations around men's mental health. And in the same breath, let us create spaces, safe spaces where men can talk about their mental health. It don't even have to include women in those spaces. Men there can be like men who are just like, you know what, I'm creating this space for my bros to just come and talk about their feelings, to, you know, offload, to vent healthily, to cry without the fear of being called a mama man and a sissy, you know, to experience heartbreak and loss and pain and not feel like this is going to determine my worth as a man, right? Let's also teach or show men in our lives, you know, the outlets, the ways that you can get help, you know, therapy, if you're not really if you don't really need like an intense mental health service provider, but you just need somebody to like help you to navigate the bouts of probably stress or anxiety or depression, you can get a mental health coach. I had the privilege of working with a gentleman in my coaching program, and it was such an amazing experience for both of us. And I would love to be able to do more of that for, you know, men. So talk to somebody, you know, you have a service provider, you have a psychiatrist, therapist, or counselor. Maybe talk to your GP so they can, you know, give you the tips and what you need to do for your mental health. Another thing, what's that? Another thing, I said supports, provide the space for having those kind of conversations. You can also encourage healthy lifestyle and healthy lifestyle changes. There are some things that we engage in, or there's some things that we generally, but men engage in that can contribute to poor mental health. Too much alcohol, substance abuse. Those things contribute to poor mental health. Not exercising enough. That's general. We all need to exercise because it not only, you know, make your body look right and feel good, but it gives you like that boost, that mental boost that we all need. And then men, just like take care of yourselves in like a general way. Do not continue to allow society to dictate what you should and shouldn't feel. And I know that's easier said than done. But as society continues to advance and evolve and become more informed, more informed, then I believe the spaces will be created for men to just feel their feelings, seek help, and be better and stronger for themselves first, and then even for us who are dependent on them. So yeah, this is a very short conversation, even though this video is 30 odd minutes. I gotta cut a lot of things, but it's a very short conversation. So I start a conversation on men's mental health, and it is my hope that throughout this month I'll be able to have some men come on here and talk about their own experiences with mental health issues, and even like growing up in Jamaica as a man, and how our society has shaped their views on mental health. So fingers crossed, I will get my guests for this month. I'm working on getting them because I think having, it's one thing for like me as a woman to talk about men's mental health, but it's another thing for like a guy to come on and be like, yes, this is what I experienced, this is how it worked for me, this is how I'm dealing with now, blah blah blah, etc. So looking forward to that. But let me know in the comments below, what are your views on men's mental health? Do you think that this is a topic that is talked about enough? Do you think we need to talk about it some more? As a man, if you're in the comments below, let me know how you feel about society's views on your mental health, your mental well-being. Let's talk about it in the comments. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for tuning in to this video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And when you subscribe, turn on your notification bell so you will not miss the next time that I post. I will see you in the next video, hopefully with a guest. Take care.